So we'll call order. We have everybody present with the exception of Victor and
Mickey.
Mickey. So the next item is the minutes that were sent out again today to you all, prepared by our fine secretary, Ms. Stratton. So any comments about those?
Great job.
Yeah.
Okay, I would have a motion to accept those.
So moved.
Move.
Okay, a second?
Second.
You heard it,
You ruined our minutes.
Maggie and Sarah.
Different name.
We're
But now,
done.
now I know you can hear me. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, no, we can hear you. I don't think we have anybody else who's joined us on the public tonight, so is there anybody out there? No, and I think Lisa indicated hadn't indicated to me there, had anybody agreed to sign up, so if that changes, we'll see it on the screen. Okay, let's just sort of launch into what we've got before us in new business, and I don't have any particular series of what order we go in here. Maybe we should have a brief conversation starting out with the educational effort on climate resiliency and sustainability for the task force. And my sense is that really the next step is probably to next month try to meet with the Board of Education to sort of find out where they are at with this sort of a thing. And then I think that would be a logical next step. Anybody have any thoughts about that?
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead, Frank.
Of course, a lot of this is going to be mixed up by this COVID business. So I'm thinking right now, if we were to do it, it's not likely that we're going to have a public meeting over at the library. So that's an A of it. And I, for one, much prefer a public meeting. That doesn't mean I don't do a Zoom. We do, but we prefer that. To some extent, I see the education effort that I think is implied, item A, as being distinct from, oh, Howard, you're welcome.
Hey, Mickey.
Buenos días.
Warm.
¿Cómo se va?
Mickey, you
Hello.
on? You're on mute, Mickey. Good.
There he is.
Now, Mickey, I have to, before we go any further, I have to ask, I see bars behind you. Are you in prison? You're muted.
I want you to know that there's an upside to global warming.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
It's T-shirt, and where are you, Mickey?
Puerto Morelos, Mexico. I am about an hour south of Cancun and about an hour north of Playa del Carmen on the Yucatan coast of the Caribbean. And come on down.
Careful what you say.
Be careful what you say, exactly. Okay, well, welcome.
It actually-
Do any of the big whales or any of the big ocean guys migrate by that, or?
No, we're on the Atlantic side. The big.
Yeah, that's the other side, the
right,
Pacific. Yeah. Okay. Well, I bet it's fun anyway.
So let's go back to Frank. We started to talk about the education stuff. Go ahead, Frank.
I said that to some extent, I see item A, discussion of education effort by the task force on climate change resiliency and sustainability, separate from our contact with the Board of Education. That's certainly part of our total education package. But I think here we were talking about something of a lecture series.
Yes.
So I've done very little on that to the moment, and it may be complicated by some of the things that Zell and I talked about earlier today. In particular, the plan, the town of Groton to hold some workshops on the subject specific to the flooding or possible flooding of downtown Mystic. So I think that this is in sort of a hold mode in my shop right now because I'd like to do it live, which I don't think is going to happen for quite a while. And I'd like to know more about what the town is planning in terms of these workshops.
Okay, so what Frank is talking about is that I had sent out to you, or actually I'd gotten, I think a week ago, a copy of the grant that the town of Groton, unbeknownst to us, applied and received for $100,000, I guess, or short of that,
Yeah.
to look at a limited area of downtown Mystic in terms of resiliency and sea level rise / flooding, or storm sea level rise and flooding. And we were sort of, to say the least, not consulted. Two, we're not on that list of agencies that they refer to in that, and I think you've all got a copy of that, and you probably saw that. And I think part of my frustration is that I hear more planning, blah, 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 and not much action, either in the form of education or in the form of a real discussion about what alternatives might be in terms of what action we might take. It is sort of, I think, a big concern from my point of view. And I guess would sort of like to have your views as well. And I would have to agree with Frank. If we start an education program about sea level rise and storms and flooding, I would much prefer to do it in person than to do it on Zoom. I think the Zoom is really a limiting system right now. Now, the upside is that this virus peak may be over relatively soon, although God knows there may be another virus in to follow this. So, but hopefully, I don't feel like we're behind the power curve, particularly with the exception of what the town's going to do, because I think we do need to coordinate with the town, and we sort of need to get the politics of this straight with the town staff.
You mean that the politics of their relationship or our relationship to the whole thing? Is that,
exactly.
because that's what I found most sort of disturbing, is that, here they, we are, if I may say, sort of this powerhouse advisory team, and they're not using it to their advantage. So somebody they need a little hand holding perhaps.
Yeah.
But that's my sense.
Or perhaps we need to learn why that is.
Why exactly? It could be, yeah.
Well, I think it's probably both. We need to learn exactly what happened or why it, and I just have to have I had last summer asked to have a meeting with, for example, John Reiner, and we never heard back. And I asked in the fall, didn't hear back. And finally, we did have a meeting, and we actually had a cup of coffee 2 or 3 weeks ago. And at that point, I learned that they had this grant. And so I then, after that meeting, sent them a note saying, I want to see a copy of this grant. So it seems to me that we need to find out more about exactly what you said, Sarah, and then go from there. And I guess I'm inclined to want to keep Bert involved with that loop. And that may be a little bit tricky because I know Bert and Reiner are quite close, but I would like to get this thing straight.
I think he absolutely needs to be, because how they submitted an application for that without at least letting the task force know they were doing it. And it's just,
Exactly.
hello.
Yeah, I thought that was really odd.
And Frank also asked his colleagues over at the university, had anybody talked to them over at Circa? And the answer was, first they heard of it. So that's a little bit troubling, to say the least.
Was it done, was it one of these things that was maybe done at the last minute and leveraged some of the ideas or work they're familiar with that we've done, or what's your perception of it? Is it something that was?
I have not had the time to really dig into it. I'm gonna have to.
Okay,
Well, I note that the primary contact is Bruce Lofgren. Lofgren. Have we ever met with him or, I mean,
No, we have not. I know who he is. I've had conversations with him on the phone. I've never, I don't believe, had a face-to-face conversation with him.
I mean, we are listed, looking further down on this, we are listed, buried within all the other town agencies, but there is a listing of the task force members.
Okay, I missed that.
Yeah, under town administration, et cetera.
Okay.
Where somewhere's under sanitation, I think. No.
Vicky, is that hot weather getting to you? Okay, anybody else have comments about this at this point?
Well, I did also notice that the geographic area, I was a little puzzled that it was, I understand that they could make a whole thing about downtown Mystic being historical, et cetera, and economic, et cetera, et cetera. But, Willow Point and West Mystic wasn't included, nor was any of the River Road area.
River Road. There was that whole letter to the editor in the paper,
Right.
which I all saw to that.
Yeah.
point.
Yeah,
I mean, the letter to the editor was right on point.
Yeah,
Yes, I missed-
And I mean, this is the only way this, I mean, if you're gonna have any action, and if you don't include Stonington, nothing's gonna work.
right.
well, yeah, exactly. I mean, why would you do half a town? I mean, that
Yeah.
only in Connecticut would you do half a town.
No, you would, why would you do half a watershed
Right.
in
I
two?
mean, it's just kind of preposterous, actually.
Yeah.
But, I mean, good for them that they reached out and they got some funding. I mean, that is a good thing out of this. And, hopefully they'll be open to some thoughts on how to make a good product out of it. I mean, it's a terrific thing to do a study of Mystic. It is going to be a highly impacted, it's already impacted by high tides, as all you guys know. So hopefully we can make it better.
Actually, we applied for funding. Did we actually get the grant?
Yes.
And I
yeah.
think you talked with
It was hard to
John.
tell as well. I agree with you, Mick. We know we got it. Huh? That looked like an application. That was it.
I think that is, well, as I understand it, we actually got the grant.
And I think in your conversations with the Johns, that you should really request on behalf of the task force that as a consulting firm is hired, that they communicate with us before they reinvent the wheel again.
Right, right. Well, I think maybe what I need to do is actually put that in writing from the task force.
Yeah.
So it's not
Maybe,
just-
could I make a suggestion? That
Yes.
just, I know everybody's entitled to the disappointment factor in this, but I would just suggest a positive letter that indicates, good on you. you got funding, and
Yeah.
it's a great idea to go study what needs to be done to create a more resilient downtown Mystic. I'm all for that. You know, we'd love to get involved and help with that, and you know, are at your disposal.
You know, I think that's a great idea, Sarah. And I just heard you said you agreed to draft that for us.
No, but break before you get too far out on that limb. I think I wouldn't write a letter yet. I think we need to
Even better.
tippy-toe. I think we need to tippy-toe in on this. I agree with Sarah as far as the tone of any letter, up to a point. I stand ready to be of assistance. Hearing no request for assistance, I got a lot of other things to do,
That's right.
Right.
sort of thing. Now, I don't know how you say that, but that's certainly the way I would be thinking. Now, I think there's some sort of an impedance mismatch here between this task force and the town. Whether it was because the way Patrice dealt with Bert and that, or dealt with Reiner, or there's a history of problems with Stever and the planning office. There's something going on here that we need to sweep away, not under the rug. And the question is how best to do that. So I don't think, I don't know quite, if you ask me to write a letter right now, I don't quite know how I would write the letter. The tone, I agree with, has to be this, but at the same time, it should be that. You know, I think getting together, maybe as a group, because they've seen enough of Zell, maybe as a group with Bert and Reiner, to sit down and talk about the future.
Yeah.
We see this as a start. You got this in hand, it's hot damn splendid. Where are we going? We've been talking about education for quite a while. If they're going to set up some workshops, that's fine. Now, the other thing that I didn't get into when I commented on the proposal or whatever it is a terrible proposal. What it basically says is send us some money and we'll do something. As a consulting engineer and a consulting firm, I wouldn't know whether I was qualified to bid on it. What are the particulars? What do you want me to do beyond the obvious? You know, make up a plan. They need, if a proposal is going to be written, it ought to have a lot more detail in it. So just what it is they're going to be doing beyond the obvious. And you and I can sit down right now and save them $90,000, or I'll take $90,000. What the hell? We'll write the letter. So they're clearly in need of some additional help on the one hand. And on the other hand, our trick is to figure out how best to provide that. And at the same time, I think we need to correct this impedance mismatch.
Yeah, I agree with you, Frank. And I think that perhaps they don't want our help, but I think that's where sitting down with them and just sort of say, look, we're here. We've been sort of standing by, but there seems to be a sense of, I don't know, sort of avoiding us or forgetting about, maybe they just forgot. I don't know, but I agree that I don't want to be wasting time every month and more often. We put a lot of time and effort into this from all different angles. And but if it's just dumping it into an empty hole, then what's the point?
What's the point?
Okay.
Now, remember, the other thing, I think we've been very zealous, I think, time and time again, you've been cautioning us to be careful in our approach to the town council, for example. So we've been nothing but, and at least in my estimation, polite and deferral, and we present our stuff, and we didn't present all the hard notes, what the hell you guys been doing over the last 10 years,
Right.
Sort of thing. And you're forgotten. Not good here.
Mm.
I want to for a sec go back to what Mickey asked. Do we really know that we got this? I don't see anything in this that says that. It's a copy of an application.
It's
No.
my understanding that we got it. I'll double check that. But think there was an announcement in one of the town council meetings that they had gotten this to the council. But I'll check.
You want me to check?
What about the cover that, I mean, John
Well,
Ryan
Frank,
sent it to you.
Sure, Frank, if you want to check, go ahead. I mean, that's fine. But to this point that Sarah and Frank have talked about, I agree that the soft approach is the way to go.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe what we start with is a meeting. And I know John Burt well enough to say, John, we'd like to meet with you. And we have to decide whether we want to do this with Reiner. Probably a good idea in terms of transparency. But three of us could easily meet with John and just sort of have this conversation. I mean, I have no problem with that. But I need to have you all weigh in on your thoughts on this. Jesse?
Well, what about if Frank checks and we actually got the money, then I think what we've been talking about makes sense. If we didn't, it's kind of interesting that they didn't ask us for a letter of support as they did all these other organizations, but that's.
Yep. Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine proceeding with determining if they've gotten funding. I don't know if there are other grants that were applied to in our area. I mean, so if there's this, is there anything else out there that might be of interest or overlap into what we do?
Well,
So
yeah, let
maybe
me just interrupt you a second there and say that I know they had applied for a grant to look at all of the Mystic River, and they
Okay.
were turned down.
Okay,
And then they came back with this grant, and as my understanding, they got that grant, but that's,
oh, okay. All right,
I'll have to check that. I haven't actually seen that in writing. But go ahead.
yeah, I mean, I don't, listen, I share a little bit of a sense of frustration. I mean, certainly COVID has impacted not only the way we work together, what we work on, and what we're able to do. And it's frustrating. And I think in many ways, as this latest wave works its way through and people are able to get outside again in the spring, I mean, you can have this thing naturally die down anyway. And you could think about trying to really initiate by, March, April, May, getting in place some real set, defined educational, if that's what we next want to turn to, and we think that's important. But I think in terms of public engagement, those would be your likely time periods.
Well, I mean, I think the way that study is set up, I think there's an anticipation of having some public education there. They may call it public participation, but
3 workshops.
yeah, 3 workshops. So there's an opportunity,
Right.
and it's one that we clearly could fill that gap.
I think the other
We don't-
interesting phenomenon going on is this overlap with a couple other organizations in town. And there's this, what is it called? Mickey, when you sent out the note that you just did about Rise Up Mystic, it's in there. It's Roger and Ann Schmidt, had this
Climate initiative.
climate,
climate.
CCL, I think the climate,
Climate initiative.
yeah.
Well, there's a bunch of,
And then there are a lot of things going on, and I'm wondering how we might have a role of perhaps knitting some of this together, leveraging some of the people that are enthusiastic and interested in it, and kind of pushing that forward a bit in this next quarter to 2.
well, I'm not sure I want to become a convener per se. I mean, that's a hell of a lot of work. But I would
I was
suggest,
looking at it as people that might do work.
pardon?
I was looking at it as some people that might do work.
Well, maybe. I mean, you got the Conservation Commission potentially involved here. You've got the planning and zoning folks. You got historic preservation folks who will have an interest in this sort of thing. You got this the town of Stonington who'll be interested in this thing, and then there's all these other groups that aren't in the area, but will have, if anything gets proposed, will have a definite interest in. For example, the seaport. If someone starts talking about tidal gates, the seaport's going to be very interested in that sort of thing. So is the Mystic side, the Stonington side of Mystic. And then you've got Save the River, or Save the Sound rather,
Right.
who will be interested, and Rise Up Mystic in a sort of micro scale from their point of view, I think, but they're all going to have an interest in this thing.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts here?
I mean, you have some partners then, I think, that could help. You know, it could get unwieldy, or you'd have to watch that, but you have some people that certainly will participate and help you form a critical mass with it, I would think.
Anybody
Well,
else?
what's the conclusion? We're gonna,
Well,
I'll check on the grant. You're gonna try to set up a meeting with John Burt and John Ryder.
Yep.
All of us with the above, maybe.
We're able to meet with him as long as we make it clear that we're not in a decision-making mode.
Right.
Just exchanging information. And that's fine. But if that's basically the way the rule, we're not supposed to meet unless we have a public, and I don't want to have this is not.
No, right.
Yeah, it's not a public meeting, just sort of an informational, just sort of a discussion about our role, really.
Yeah.
And we don't want them to feel threatened or railroaded, and I think it would help us all.
Okay, I'll do that.
And it would also help clarify the possibilities that exist with our group kind of standing by, that, you know, they may not have really figured it out yet, that, gee, here's this group that we could be running things by that could actually be really helpful. I mean, imagine it's almost like the right arm doesn't know what the left arm is doing within the town, which, surprise, surprise, but you know, that we might have been able to write letters of support and would be able to in the future. And you know, I just think could potentially be a huge help to them if they want it.
Other thoughts? Jesse?
Not really. I'm not sure that initial meeting needs to be with all of us. I think that if you and Frank, for instance, wanted to meet with them, that's fine. I'm certainly happy to do it, but I'm not sure that we need to come in en masse.
Yeah, we don't want to overwhelm them. I agree.
Well,
I'm interested to learn why the proposal of studying the Mystic watershed was turned down, but the Mystic downtown was approved. I mean, maybe it was considered too large or too big in scope for them to fund versus this was more practical. I don't know, but be interested in some of the feedback they got on that.
Yeah, it's not entirely clear in looking at this thing. I see the Long Island Sound Futures Fund. Mick?
Yes,
Got any idea where the money came from?
yeah, well, that's the Futures Fund is kind of coordinated by the Long Island Sound Study folks.
Yeah, right.
And
It looked like
right
there were, I'm sorry, it looked like there were a couple of sources here. But
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
And that Futures Fund is a kind of a consortium of grantor organizations that have pooled their money to kind of coordinate their grants. So rather than necessarily have 10 philanthropic organizations, each giving grants, having their own, RFPs and all that stuff, they put their money together to do that.
Yeah, because who's
So-
new?
So
What's the-
it's probably, I don't know, 10 years old, but I'm actually looking right now at their website to see if we're on that. So if you give me another minute, I'll see if we're listed as one of their grants for 2021.
Okay, but break. What website? Long Island Sound of the fund
National
Futures Fund?
Wildlife Futures
or,
Fund,
or NUF? What is NFWF?
National Wildlife Fund,
Fund.
National? No,
Wildlife and Fish, isn't
that's
it?
it.
Fish and Wildlife Service.
That's it.
Yes,
It's a
correct.
fund that the Fish and Wildlife Service has created.
Yeah.
And it's then provided to grants to states and.
Yeah.
not-for-profit.
National Fish and Wildlife Foundation.
Right,
So I'm looking at their website right now, and we are listed as one of their grantees.
Okay,
For a total of 90,000 grant amount, 60,000 matching fund, total project amount 150,000. Develop a resiliency and sustainability plan for Mystic, Connecticut, et cetera, et cetera. So
That's
that's listed.
All right, Frank, Mick, did you?
Yeah.
Got it.
okay,
Thank you.
good job,
Okay,
Mickey,
I'll
thanks.
cross that off.
And
Okay.
I can send you this. It describes who they are.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah,
If you would do that, Mickey, that would be great. So,
Okay.
okay, having said that now, how about I set up a meeting with Frank, Sarah, and myself with the two Johns?
Great.
How do you feel about that?
sounds good.
Excellent.
Unless someone wants to change seats here. Nope, everybody, that's okay?
Yep.
Good.
Okay, we'll do that. Anything else here at this point? Okay, I think we should move on to the next item, which is my involvement here on two areas. I met with the town council right after they met and indicated to them two things. One, or three things actually. One was that the task force would like to meet with the town council in the near future, as we have done before in the past. And so that's one thing. And I got a response like, yeah, that's a good idea. So that's the first thing. The second thing was that I indicated to the town council that I would like to brief them about the train proposal that I've been working on, which you guys have seen parts of off and on. And I wanted to come before them and give them a more in-depth brief because they had supported that proposal a year ago. And by sending a letter to the Connecticut, to the legislature for a public hearing supporting that, as did Stonington, the city of Groton, and New London. But this was the reason I was doing it is because DOT has finally come awake, and they've got now essentially what amounts to 11 months to get this thing done and finished by having a report back to the General Assembly by January 1, 23. And so the reason I wanted them to sort of be updated was because I anticipate they will continue to support this whole effort. And they were actually, that was on this past Tuesday. If you want to see what I said in detail, you can go to the town website, and that's all been recorded. Basically, the feedback I got was that, yeah, we want to do this. This makes sense, particularly for the redevelopment of downtown. From the task force's point of view, the reason this is important is because this is an alternative way of getting potentially automobiles off the road and get people potentially onto commuter rail in our town. So it supports our efforts, one of our three major efforts, which is the three of energy and dealing with the whole energy issue. The second one being the sea level storm stuff, and the third being health. So that was very successful, I thought. And then the third item that I brought before their attention was that I told the town council, it was not a ask, I was letting them know what I was going to do. And I was doing this on purpose to say or tell them that I was going to go before the Planning and Zoning Commission to ask them to think about or consider rezoning the downtown town center, that's the area along Route 1, and call it, instead of calling it mixed use, they'd call it transit oriented mixed use. And the reason that I'm doing that is because if we do that, then the town becomes eligible for additional funding for that kind of a redevelopment of that area. And that's, I think, in our interest. It also supports the interest that's been expressed by the last three town councils to do something about creating a Groton town center and doing it around the redevelopment of that strip mall that in part's been falling apart for over 15 years now. So that's really what I've been up to. It's been a bit of a scramble. I was supposed to go before the Planning Commission on Tuesday night, as well as the town council. I did make the town council, that one for a long period of time. And by the time I got to the Planning and Zoning Commission, they said, "Too late, Stever, you can't talk." So what they did is I sent them a letter, and that letter got their attention. And so I'm now on their on their agenda for the next meeting, which will happen in 2 weeks, which is to basically introduce the notion of changing that from just mixed use to transit oriented development. So I feel like we're making some progress. Now, having said that to you all, I have already gotten some pushback from the town staff. Like, oh, that takes a lot of work. Oh, wow. And I acknowledge all of the work it'll take, and it may take time, but I think it's both in the task force interest to see this get done, and I think it's certainly in the town's interest. We have an opportunity here, and we need to follow through with it. So that's happy to answer any of your questions.
Are you looking for the task force to specifically endorse that so that you're speaking on behalf of the task force?
Yeah, I would like you to endorse this. That's actually, yes, that's correct. So I guess I'll accept the motion to accept that we're the issues that I just mentioned are formally part of the task force moving forward.
Happy to move that.
Second.
Any discussion?
And the idea is that we're endorsing it because it contributes to the carbon footprint issue.
Reducing the carbon footprint, exactly.
Right. Right.
I mean,
It falls under the category that would have solar panels and
energy efficiency, solar panels, reducing vehicle traffic, providing people with an alternative to vehicle traffic into trains. It's all the above, and it also helps with getting the town to reuse what they already have, as opposed to digging into prime new woodland to create a more development. I mean, it's just, as we take the woodlands away or the forest away, we reduce our ability to suck up CO2. It's
right.
pretty simple. So it
So
all makes sense.
I think in the presentation then to the council for endorsement, those points should be very clearly made.
They were. Now, I did
Okay,
not
good.
make, I have not made the point about this is a better alternative than cutting down more forest. That's a bit trickier because I don't want to get some feedback, negative feedback on that at this point.
Who gave you the negative? You said town staff there was some pushback.
The
Came
town
from?
staff, yeah,
Where? Who?
planning.
We gotta, I mean, that's why I'm asking. I'm making a
Yeah.
little note.
Yeah, no. I mean, I know, I know what I mean. It's a lot of work for them. It means having a conversation. It means organizing a public hearing. It means getting public input, and then change their regulations. And while they said they simplified the regulations when they did the last rewrite, they're 400 pages long.
Right.
And what that means is going through 400 pages with a replace, cut and replace kind of a function. And you got to make sure it all goes together. So it's not exactly a slam dunk. It's going to take some folks doing some serious work. The planning commission, if they say this is what the planning and zoning commission says, this is fine, then the staff has to do it. And I don't want to make the same mistake that happened around the Mystic Oral School, where the town council says, this is great, do it. And the town planning and zoning people say, what? I didn't hear what you said. Because it's their responsibility under the law to do it, not the town council's. So I'm trying to avoid the town making that mistake that they've already made several times on several issues, actually.
Yeah, and of course, I'm sure it's running through everybody's head that this also may contribute to the hesitancy of planning to work with the task force.
I don't think so. I mean, I have spent a little time talking to several members of the planning commission. I clearly have at least 3 votes. And there are a couple that I'm going to have to work on.
But that isn't where I'm thinking the push is coming from. The pushback you said is coming from town staff.
Yeah, because town staff works for but as you well know, unless the town staff does it, I mean,
Right.
The planning and zoning commission doesn't write this stuff. The town staff does.
Yeah, it's a fine line. We're walking on the whole thing. I'm thinking.
You what?
I think we're walking a fine line on the, did you talk to Reiner before this ever came up?
Absolutely.
Oh,
And Barrett.
yeah. So it's no surprise to him. You showing up at the town council to present this for their endorsement it's not the first time he's heard about
Oh,
it.
no.
Good.
I mean, that's rule 1. No surprises.
Right, that's because then
Rule
comes
one.
see, if you go in there and then there's a pushback, I get very uncomfortable. You see.
I know.
But
Well, I mean, there is pushback, but that's all right. We'll work it through. I'm very open about that.
Okay.
It needs to be argued through.
Yeah.
And I think it's the right.
You understand where I'm coming from, the context. I'm looking at
Absolutely.
our earlier conversation about difficulties with the planning department.
Absolutely.
So that's fine. Sounds fine.
And I'm willing to, if you guys want to help, that's fine. But and if you have suggestions about how I might do it better, that I'm happy to hear that. And I'm happy to work with you guys as a team to do this too. So this is just something that I seem to have fallen into on our behalf, I guess.
Yep.
Any other comments? Jesse, you're looking very somber.
I was going to say, I don't think you fell into it. You charged into it with lots of energy, which is wonderful.
Sarah?
No comments.
Huh? Nope, no comment. Maggie or Nikki? Okay. Okay, well, so anyhow, that's where we are with that. We have now talked about
I'm
the,
sorry, break. There was a motion.
oh, yes. Sorry. Any further discussion? Take a vote.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passed unanimously. Good. I apologize for the lapse of memory there.
Robert's rules.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so the other project that came up, which is really part of 5C, is that I got a note, which I think I sent around to you. It was basically our federal representative, Courtney, saying, here's all the great things I've done. One of the, on the last page is, we're getting resiliency money to repair a seawall over in the city. And the city's not our territory, at least not supposed to be. But this is exactly why we got to keep an eye on this stuff. As far as I'm concerned, repairing seawalls on roads is a maintenance issue. It's not a resiliency issue, as I see it. Now, part of the problem is that there is a big fire hose of money coming at the communities, and they need shovel-ready projects, and so they got a shovel-ready project here. But I'm not pleased with how that sort of has come down. I mean, we've got some education to do with Courtney, I guess, maybe with the city a bit, but that project does not make the community more resilient, as far as I can see. Now, do you have anybody have a disagreement with that?
Well, I guess it would depend on if they're fundamentally changing the structure of it. You could make a more resilient seawall by making it at an angle so that
Yep.
it would not undermine, and it could actually improve the erosion of the beach and that community for at least a period of time. But I don't know if that's what they have in mind.
Oh, I'm reading the press release right now because it looks to me like it's more than just a replacement or fixing an existing seawall. For example, it says here, the Shore Avenue Seawall Replacement Project would give it a massive upgrade, a brand new 350-foot stretch of reinforced seawall with a pedestrian sidewalk and railing capable of holding back more water much more efficiently, with much more longer life expectancy. And I think a lot of us are leery of structural ways of avoiding sea level rise. You know, it's smacks of Corps of Engineers mentality, and I think that you know, I think that certainly perhaps some looking at ways of using natural approaches, like you know, moving lawns further away from the shore, et cetera, would be my first choice, at least as to how to handle this sort of thing. And you know, anyway.
Right?
I'd have to get more details on what's going on, but the wall is there, and they're going to repair it, and its current condition is, I think, in many areas and pieces of it anyway, falling down. So they're going to essentially replace it. But if you're going to look at a wall, the location is not really the front. I mean, it's more on the riverside than but there are ways. You got a wall, and you might make the new wall sort of like this kind of a thing, and taller. So the reflectivity is a very different thing. So if you're going to design things that you can get into that we're playing with, I think you're right, Sal. I think you hit it on the head right at the beginning. The abundance of money, the political limelight, and shovel ready. You know, if we go from there. So you know, when we started, one of the things that's interesting, when we started, maybe you'll remember that we said we're a town committee. Or sorry, we're Groton, the whole of Groton. We have a couple of places low lying on our list of places, and I'm glad to see that they had the same one. And we were talking to the Navy base and see what they're up to. So maybe again, a little collaboration between planning 1 and planning 2 and us would be advisable. There's going to come a time when they're going to put up a structure and we're going to say that's really a waste of money. And that'd be an embarrassment for all hands. Try to avoid that by collaborating a little bit more.
And talking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, so the next item is to simply really have a basic tell you what's likely to happen. The Connecticut Department of Transportation has got this feasibility study for the trains, and I've been badgering them gently. They're a pretty tough group, and they finally appointed a study manager, and they tell me they're working up a scope of work with 2 different consultants, and I'm going to continue to work on that. And I, at some point, may want to come before the task force and ask you to weigh in as sort of as an entire body about this whole thing. And I have no idea what that's likely to look like or how that's going to be. It may be a public meeting, or it may be simply a written statement. I just don't know yet. And that's all I have about that. Any questions? Okay, the next is next steps for the task force and future action. I guess the only thing I really would like to say about that is that, you know, we got to work to get this manager on board, 1, and 2, I think it's important to meet with the town council. Those are the two things we got to do. Anybody?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is that, Frank, you were going to try to corral that gal who has been appointed as our regional consultant, as you'd say, from the Long Island Sound Study resiliency effort. Is she on board at UConn, and did you meet her or anything?
No, she's currently on board. When I went over looking for her, she was yet to come on board. And we had tried to set up a meeting with her because she wasn't here, she is here kind of thing, she come, and that hasn't happened yet. So that's a work in progress. We have exchanged emails. So presumably names are known. All I can tell you.
Yeah, and also I had said that I would talk to some of my contacts at the day about how that might fit into an educational component going forward. And
Yes.
Steve has been very helpful, and he kind of gives a plug whenever he can, and so have a couple of others. But he talked to, is it Tim Dwyer, who's the editor there, who said, right now it seems to be coming in from some different angles. There may be an opportunity for a perspective piece or something, but as far as any kind of a series or something, they didn't seem to be terribly open to that at the moment. So, but I think we'll keep poking at that one, because I think there may be opportunity in the future.
Yeah, but I mean, this sort of follows up on our meeting with Kimberly Graylick.
Yes.
And I think that's important, and also to follow up with the good work that you've been doing with Steve Fagan, and those are the two. I guess at some point, this spring, I guess it would probably make sense to actually have a meeting with the editorial board.
Yeah,
I think we need to get a little further along before we do that.
yeah, I do too.
Okay.
I had one other thing was that I know, Zell, you and I attended that Zoom webinar done by the state on the governor's edict on, and it was, such a laundry list of stuff that it was mind-boggling.
Right.
It was like almost, you
Yep.
you name it, and it was in it.
Okay. You're right. Now, what I've done, Mickey, perfect timing here, Mickey, even though you're 3,000 miles away or 4,000 miles away. Jesse, do you want to, she was in on that too. Do you want to quickly run down that list? Because basically what it is an executive order. It's what the governor can do without going to the legislature, essentially. And so, go ahead, Jesse.
I'm not going to take our time to go through all of it. You can all read through the slides or on the DEEP website. But I think, as Zell said, I think the governor was clearly reacting to some of the licking he was taking in the press for Connecticut falling behind, not getting TCI passed, and then Massachusetts and Rhode Island backing out. So wanting to say, I'm really, I'm for doing all this stuff to address climate change. But there are some things in it that I think are relevant to what we are doing. And probably first and foremost, as we deal with the town council, what the governor has done is what the town council can do. They can take executive action and decide to do some of these things. So I think it's a good example of the kinds of things the town could do, and would take maybe part of our conversation with them to pick out what are the municipal corollaries to some of this, and in particular, repurposing money that was initially designated for microgrids and things of that sort to help municipalities do some of this work. But before I get into that, I just thought I would highlight a couple. Probably nearest and dearest to my heart is building codes. We have had a battle for 30 years with the building community about upgrading building codes. Connecticut has, in general, adopted more recent building codes when they've come out from the International Commission. But in particular, he is directing DAS in the current reiteration of the building codes, which there will be public notice of later this month, to adopt standards that are much higher. And in particular, what was encouraging to me was referencing the Insurance Institute and Building Institute of the United States. And they have a whole separate resilient building code called Fortified Homes. We got one of those provisions that they recommend into the building code, state building code last year, which is very simple. When you re-roof a house, tape the joints before you put the shingles on. And so if the shingles blow off, the water is not all seeping down. And they have a lot of things of that sort, but it will be very interesting to see what that does. And my guess is we might want to weigh in on public comments when some of those provisions come forward, but found that exciting. As I said up front, sort of DEEP has been directed to repurpose or expand the purpose of the micro grant funding program, which was refunded. It had been, well, actually there was money left in it, and the bond package from last year put additional resources into that. And so this is really for towns to do specific projects. If we had a project and you could apply for federal funds, this could supply matching funds, et cetera, in particular focused on nature-based solutions. So that was, hopefully that will get up and running. This thing laid a whole lot on DEEP. I don't know how they're going to do it because they're losing half their staff right now too, but he is trying. And then another large section of it, Sarah, in particular, was health programs and directing DPH to particularly work with vulnerable communities, and really talked about the social vulnerability index as a way of both determining what kind of assistance is given and where it should be given. What did I know. So also, and I was surprised by this one, that after 2023, the state would no longer provide any funding to third parties for diesel buses. They would have to be electric buses, and that the state fleet of vehicles, light duty vehicles, would have to be emission free. So there's a lot of hype in it that will never happen, but it is in the right direction, and it gives groups that want to push for some of these things, I think, some clout to go after them and to really work with it. And from my perspective, for us to make specific executive type suggestions to our town council.
Any other comments?
The bus business.
Yeah.
Does that mean that school buses have to be electric?
If providing funding, yep. I mean, we've for a long time provided funds through, actually partially with the VW settlement, to get clean diesel buses, but this would say no more diesel buses if they're relying upon state funding, which is an expensive proposition because electric transit buses are very, very pricey.
But as I understand, there's also some conversion work going on too. And school buses can actually be retrofitted. And it's not like building a brand new bus. They're pretty cost effective. So there's an opportunity. I mean, having sit up there and on top of Fort Hill myself, behind 40 of those damn buses, it would be a really nice thing to have them electric. Other comments? Sarah?
Oh, there is one other I wanted. The other thing that will be happening simultaneously with this is that every 3 years, DEEP has to adopt a comprehensive energy strategy, and this does address that and things that should be in it. And it is a place where, in particular, funding and emphasis on fuels and getting away from natural gas and stuff. And there will be a public scoping session for that later this month, maybe next week actually. No, it's in February, mid-February, for input into what people think should be in the comprehensive energy strategy.
Yeah, no comments on it. So, I mean, I think everything seems to be moving in the direction, right? That should say people are interested in these topics. There's a lot out there. You know, it's become over the last couple of years something much more in the public frame than I think it was when the task force even started, and that's great. It's great to see the progress. And it creates fertile ground to talk over some things to really do.
Mickey? You're muted.
I was impressed with the scope of what the governor was proposing. And what's her name? French? Oh,
Yes, Rebecca.
Rebecca.
Rebecca French.
She did a great job. I assume she's the one who put that thing together, and it's comprehensive, if nothing else.
Yep. It's really, it really is a condensation of the work of the Governor's Council on Climate Change.
Right.
All things were recommendations that came out of the GC3 report. They're now being translated into directives from the executive branch. He also extended the GC3.
Maggie?
Yeah, it'll trickle down, I hope. I think it's all positive.
Frank?
No, that's
Okay.
long list, laundry
Yeah, it
list.
is. Okay. Are there other new business matters that you all want to bring up? Okay, I have one educational matter I'll bring up, and I'm in the process of reading this book. It's called can you see it there?
Yeah, sure. World-without
Okay.
soil.
It's all about soil. And I gotta say, it's written for the Joe Q public, but it's very well done. And I'm going to read it, or I'm halfway through it, and I'll pass it around. I guess I didn't fully appreciate how much carbon gets sucked up into the soil. And
Who is the author?
the author is Joe Handelsman. It's a woman who's a soil scientist, microbiologist,
Okay.
and she had worked in government in the Obama administration, and she has done a very nice job. And it's accessible, I mean, to anybody, but it provides you, I just think, a perspective about how important soils are, and that includes us here in Groton. And
Oh, for
so, pardon?
I said, for sure. That was
Yeah.
something Bill Nearing, back in the 50s and 60s was promoting the importance of soil, not to be confused with dirt. Way back when.
Yep.
And yeah, there's no question. And soil erosion and degradation. And it is the foundation of so many things. So.
I mean, I had that same course with Bill Nearing that you did, and that was a long time ago. But this book was sort of a nice refresher
Yeah.
to rethink about it. And I think I'd recommend you all read it at some point. I'll send it around to everybody. It's just background information I think ends up being quite powerful.
Nice.
Okay. Any other meetings that people have been to that they want to share going on to old business?
Our meeting with Alan. JD Allen.
Oh, yes. Go ahead, Frank. Or
No,
should I
I-
start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so out of the blue, I get an email last week saying, "Hey, Zell, can you call me this afternoon? I want to have an interview with you. I'm JD Allen. I work for WSHU. Is that right? Yeah, WSHU, the
Take what I
public
ever said.
Connecticut Broadcasting." And so I called him back up and said, "Can't do it today, but I'm happy." And it was about sea level. Was
Well,
the topic.
sort of.
Pardon? Well, sort of.
His particular interest was in a paper that was written recently about the frequency of storms, presumably of higher intensity storms, affecting New England waters. And would put that together with rising sea level, what does it mean in terms of coastal resiliency? The paper was written by a group from Yale with Kerry Emanuel from MIT involved. So lots of good credentials in all of this. And he wanted to hear what we thought about what it might mean to Connecticut.
And so Frank and I had I guess it must have been a 45-minute Zoom conversation with him. We were, go ahead, do you describe what, well, it was a good meeting. And we were sort of trying to figure out what he's trying to do with it. And it looks like he's going to try to put together a segment for NPR about the impacts this is likely to have on the shore. I think he sent us that article as sort of stir us up a little bit. And we said, yeah, it's another piece of the data that we have coming forward. We think it fits in with what we understand to be the situation. So he seemed to, he's put together a podcast about climate change. And he said to us that NPR is now going to seriously engage over time the whole issue of climate change, resilience, and sustainability. My response was, we'd be happy to sit with you and talk. So we'll see what happens next. And then I get back a note saying, "Hey, Zell, I haven't done anything yet. It's just because what we talked about was too long to put on the show, but I'm working on it." So I thought it was positive.
Right.
Anybody else got any other leads? Let me know.
I would like, that this is just babble now. Not that previous wasn't babble, but this is recognizes babble. I thought that letter dealing with flooding in the town of Groton, now just tidal flooding, regular tidal flooding, and what the town of Groton is or isn't doing, was very interesting and something that I wanted to put in my bag. Because all too often, when we talk about rising sea level, they all say, what does it mean to me? And around this table, I think we can all say, we can give some examples of what's going on. And they may or may not have been seen by JQ Public. But here was an example. That letter said, hey, Mr. Public is sitting out there and his front yard gets it every now and then. He wants to know why. So I see that as part of our education box. I just put it in there.
Yeah, whoever wrote that letter did a good job.
Yeah.
And he made an important point.
Yep.
Okay. We've talked about the delay in the manager selection or the search, so I don't think we have to talk any more about that. Any other old business that you want to bring up, or?
We didn't really talk about it here. You might be mistaking our talk with the task force talk.
Yeah,
It continues to be delayed, and it looks like right now that the date is actually going to be around the 1st of February to start going after the physician.
yeah.
The job ad is not out as far as I know, and I don't think
It is not out. My information is that it's likely to go out somewhere around the early to middle part of February.
Yeah.
And again, I would ask if you have any contacts or know people who might be appropriate for this, send them what we've got. I mean, that's really important because this has got to be a serious search and a serious selection process. It's really crucial. Silence. Okay, anybody got anything else? Mickey?
I
You're
don't think there's
muted.
any doubt, yeah. I don't think there's any doubt that when this position gets filled, that person could, if we make our presence well known, and our offer is to help them in any way we can, which is what we intend, could be a way to deal with any feelings from the planning department that we are just the straw that's going to break the camel's back. And so I do think that, before we, maybe even before we try to, mend fences, or at least at the same time with the other members of the planning department. And I know that we're not necessarily happy that the idea of this position be a planning department position, but that may in fact what turns out to be, whether we like it or not. But in any case, we view it, and we hope this person views it, as a town-wide position, more of a scope than just planning, and the whole thing about action and all that. Any case, like you say, the more we have, the more we're involved in actually recruiting, and later on working with this person, I think is going to really make the difference about what our role is going to be in the future.
I think that's right. Now, I mean, to be clear, I in my conversations with John Reiner recently, I made it very clear that we expect this person to be a person who coordinates across all departments, and that this person is going to be more of an action-oriented person than a planner. And he had no problem with that. So I just want to reassure you at this point, at least from the conversation. And I mean, Reiner's department is not just planning. Remember, building services, which is the building code, comes under his department. I mean, that is really important. How we put houses above flood level, how we insulate the houses, how we storm-proof them, how do we get rid of natural gas and propane, all those things come under his jurisdiction. So there is plenty of action to be had there. Other thoughts?
You'll notice when you read that grant application that that individual figured prominently in it. He was to be the one that was really honcho on the job. So that's it's another little tab in our bucket when we go talk about fences.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't necessarily think this is a not so much mending fences as building building a system that works better. Okay.
I want to find the fence.
Well, yeah, okay, I got it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can sit here and imagine all sorts of fences.
I
And
know.
some of them are irreparable and some of them may not be. But we got this problem that we all share. And
Yep.
Let's work together on it. We don't need to fight
Yep.
across purposes kind of a thing.
By the way, Frank, has there been any movement at all on the Groton Long Point Bridge?
No, nothing,
Okay.
nothing. No meetings, no word, no nothing.
High priority, right?
Well, it may be priority. It may be that they've got a little battle on their hands with our friends down there. I don't know that. That's just giving Greg some latitude.
For what it's worth, apparently the bridge going into Noank that's under construction, there was a little glitch
Whoop.
and things elevations don't quite match.
Oh.
And
Slight glitch.
huh? Yeah, right. It's like this.
Oh,
And so that's under review right now, apparently. And so what should have been open in December might be open by Memorial Day. I'm just pointing out what happens with construction projects.
Math is a tricky thing.
Pardon?
I said,
Go ahead,
math
Sarah.
is a tricky thing.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Well,
They're
some of you, and especially Frank, if he hasn't already read it, should read this book called Humble Pie. Have you ever heard of
humble
it?
pie.
Humble Pie. It's by a math guy who talks about all the screw ups that have been done where engineers have not quite gotten it right and the results thereof.
Sure.
Well,
On the other hand, take a look at that telescope that's flying out of there into space.
yeah. I got to tell you, having worked for both the Corps of Engineers and the Bureau of Reclamation, I pick up the paper today and the Glen Canyon Dam, which provides water to millions of people, may not be able to do that very much longer because it's down at 27% of its capacity.
Yeah.
And it's a collision of engineering and climate.
By the way-
Not a small matter.
The pie that I refer to is spelled P-I, as you probably already guessed.
Okay. Well, anything else anybody has? Anybody else going once? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Not yet.
No,
We'll
go ahead,
give you,
Frank.
we'll give you the motion, but our next regular meeting is scheduled for February 10th.
Yes. Is that, everybody's okay with that?
Good. Move to
Okay.
adjourn.
Okay. All those in favor?
I do when you're not here, Sarah.
Sarah's in it.
We're done.
We'll never stop meeting, Jess.
That's right.
Thank
Shut
you.
off shut off the tape recorder. Right, we're out of here.
Thank you all. Talk soon.
Yeah,
Bye,
bye.
guys. Enjoy,
Bye.
Nikki.
Hey, say well. Buena con Dios. Adios.